James chapter 3. We're starting a new chapter in the book of James. This is probably the most famous chapter in the whole book. If you talk about James, this is probably one of the first things most people would probably think of as this particular chapter. It has quite a bit to say on the tongue. While there are a lot of verses in the Bible that have to do with our speech and our conversation, this is one of the few and only places that spends such a elongated amount of time or a certain number of verses on it. It's a very, it's 12 verses on this topic. So not, most other places in the Bible like Proverbs, Ephesians, that kind of a thing, will just have a line or two, okay? Whereas this gives us a very good deep dive into our conversation, and that's where we're going to be here this evening. So I'm going to go ahead and read verses 1 to 5, and that's what we're going to be covering today, verses 1 to 5 of chapter 3. Not many of you should become teachers, my brothers, for you know that we who teach will be judged with greater strictness. For we all stumble in many ways. If anyone does not stumble in what he says, he is a perfect man, able also to bridle his whole body. If we put bits into the mouths of horses so that they obey us, we guide their whole bodies as well. And then look at ships also. Though they are very large and are driven by strong winds, they are guided by a very small rudder, wherever the will of the pilot directs it. And this is also true of the tongue, and it's a small member, yet it boasts of great things. And I'll end there, even though that's 5a. It's a good spot to end there. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we ask for your Spirit's blessing for tonight's Bible study. We pray, Lord, that we are hungry for your word, ready to eat and take in and meditate and just focus in on your truth. May we be humble and open-minded, and may your word pierce us in ways that it needs to in all of our individual walks, so that we may grow closer to you. We pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Again, the first question has to do with, what are you focused on in your Christian walk? What is it you're working on? Is it a particular sin that you're struggling with? Is it your devotional time maybe that you're trying to really work on? Prayer in your life, giving, service? What is it that, this is just a personal reflection question. What in your life are you really honed in on? Because a lot of times we like to focus in on specific things, especially like if it's something we're struggling with. What are we working on in our lives? Or you're not working on anything in particular. That's an answer in and of itself. A lot to unpack if that was the case. But what is it in your life that you're working on, focusing on, and, trying to improve on with the power of the Holy Spirit? It's a good one. Yeah.
I'm trying to be nice to Jack.
That's a good place to start. So just, again, this is just a personal thing. Write down one or two things that you might be working on in your own heart.
I think one of the toughest things would be loving your neighbor. That's just,
It's not easy. That's right. Well, that's why he tells us to love them, not agree with them, right? All right, so that's the first question. Next question. Why does James seem to discourage people from teaching here? So in verse 1 it says, "Not many of you should be teachers, my brothers, for you know that we who teach will be judged with greater strictness." And so it seems like he's trying to discourage people from looking to teach. He says, not many of you should do this. This is not for everyone, okay? And which is a unique way to approach it, because a lot of times the Bible is like, you better be doing this, you better be doing this. Why aren't you doing this more? You're not doing this enough. But for here, James is like, I don't know if you should look at this. He's very discouraging about teaching. Why is that?
Very important that you teach the right thing. You better not be a false teacher.
That's a true point. It's a very good point. Why does he say that you shouldn't look to this? What's the reason he gives? Yeah, they're going to be judged harsher. Much, much, much harsher. Hold your place in James and turn to the left to Matthew. Matthew chapter 23. Matthew chapter 23. This is often referred to as the 7 woes. The 7 woes. Matthew chapter 23. Please follow along. Jesus said to the crowds and to his disciples, "The scribes and the Pharisees sit on Moses' seat, so do and observe whatever they tell you, but not the works they do. For they preach, but do not practice. They have heavy burdens hard up to bear, and lay them upon people's shoulders, but they themselves are not willing to move with their one finger. Then they do all the deeds to be seen by others, for they make their... No, man, I have trouble with that word. Phylacteries. Thank you, Karen, very much. Phylacteries. They make their phylacteries broad and their fingers long, and they love the place of honor at feast and the best seats in the synagogue, and greetings in the marketplace, and being called rabbi by others. But you are not to be called rabbi, for you have one teacher, and you are all brothers. And call no man your father on earth, for you have one Father who is in heaven. And neither shall you be called instructors, for you have one instructor, the Christ. The greatest among you shall be your servant, and whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and whoever humbles himself will be exalted." And now we start the woes. "But woe to you, scribes and Pharisees and hypocrites, for you shut the kingdom of heaven in people's faces. For you neither enter yourselves, nor allow those who would be enter to go in. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you travel across the sea and the land to make a single proselyte, and then when you become a proselyte, you make him twice as much a child of hell as yourself. Woe to you, you blind guides, who say, if anyone swears by the temple, it is nothing. But if anyone swears by the gold of the temple, he is bound by his oath. You blind fools! For which is greater, the gold or the temple that made the gold sacred? And you say, if anyone swears by the altar, it is nothing. But if anyone swears by the gift that is on the altar, he is bound by his oath. You blind men! For which is greater, the gift or the altar that makes the gift sacred? So whoever swears by the altar swears by it and by everything on it. Whoever swears by the temple swears by it and by him who dwells in it. And whoever swears by heaven swears by the throne of God and by him who sits upon it. So woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, you hypocrites! For you tithe mint and dill and cumin, and have neglected the weightier matters of the law, justice and mercy and faithfulness. These ought to have done without neglecting others. You blind guides, straining out a gnat and swallowing a camel. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, you hypocrites! For you clean the outside of the cup and the plate, but inside you are full of greed and self-indulgence. You blind Pharisee, first clean the inside of the cup and then the plate. The outside may also then be clean. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees and hypocrites, for you are like whitewashed tombs, which outwardly appear beautiful, but within are full of dead people's bones and all uncleanliness. So also outwardly appear righteous to others, but within are full of hypocrisy and lawlessness. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, you hypocrites! For you build the tombs of the prophets and decorate the monuments of the righteous, saying, if we had lived in the days of our father, we would not have taken part with them in shedding the blood of the prophets. Thus you witness against yourselves that you are sons of those who murdered the prophets. Fill up then the measure of your fathers, you serpents, you brood of vipers. How are you to escape being sentenced to hell? Therefore I send you the prophets and wise men and scribes, some of whom you will kill and crucify, and some of you will flog in your synagogues and persecute from town to town, so that on you may come all the righteous bloodshed on earth, from the blood of the righteous Abel to the blood of Zechariah to the son of Becherah, whom you murdered between the sanctuary and the altar. Truly I say to you, all these things will come upon this generation. Now, what we see here, Jesus was not this forceful, indicting, judgmental, convicting, harsh to anyone else. But he was to these people because they were the teachers and the leaders of the church. And this is just, think about this. Think about the woman at the well and how he treated the woman at the well, or the woman that brought him to be stoned, or the person that bore a hole through the roof to bring down the guy on the mat, and all these different. Think about Zacchaeus, Matthew the tax collector. All right, like all these people he was around that were sinners. He did not talk to them in this fashion. He was very graceful and forgiving. But for the teachers, he had his harshest language. And this is just an inkling or an example of what is meant by they're going to be held to a stricter standard. And this is why James is saying not everyone should be a teacher, okay? And why not everyone should be one that decides to take on that responsibility. Now, the next question is, why would they be judged stricter? One of the answers Miss Linda mentioned earlier, and that is because you can be a false teacher, all right, and mislead people. Why else would a teacher be judged stricter? While you're thinking about that, Mr. Dave, can you please turn to Isaiah 9 and I ask you to read verse 16? Oh, I'm sorry. Did I leave it up there long enough? I'm sorry.
I didn't realize that.
Oh, that's okay. Thank you for speaking up. Miss Rochelle, can you please go to Jeremiah 23? Ashley Jean, can you please go to 2 Timothy chapter 4? So why else do you think that teachers might be judged more harshly or stricter? You're welcome. Any other thoughts?
Maybe because the word warrants that knowledge comes up, so it might be easy to think you have all this knowledge, not keep your eyes on where your wisdom comes from.
Okay. All right. Lose sight of that. Got it. Okay. People look up to you and for answers and stuff like that. Very good point. Anyone else? Go ahead, Ashley Jean.
Because they're in a position of authority,
Okay.
and people look to them to find more out about God, and they spend more time studying, and they're going to learn more and know more of the Word, and they're going to be accountable to them.
Okay. Very good. Very good. Why else?
Being hypocrites, they're putting out they're not living what they're preaching.
Right. That's very true. They're going to be under the microscope to practice what they preach. Right. Okay. One other thing I was thinking of too. You guys are all correct in everything you're saying. When it comes to the teacher, the preacher, the prophet, the evangelist, they're speaking for God. Right? Like, they're speaking for Him. Like, when you guys come on Sunday, you don't come to hear me. And if you do, please don't. Okay? Please don't. All right? You're coming to hear from God. Okay? I am just an instrument and a tool. You are coming to hear from Him. Okay? And from His Word being preached. And so you are God's representative. And so what you say reflects on God more so than any other position in the church. You are, for lack of a better way of putting it, you're God's mouthpiece, right? Like, you are the one that is speaking for God. That's why, talking about harsher judgment, that's why in the Old Testament, I don't know where that came from. It's been a long, long day. Very long day. Anyways, in the Old Testament, false prophets were allowed to be stoned to death. Okay, that's why I sometimes wish we could still adhere to that rule of people that like want to prophesy and stuff like that and say all these things are going to happen and then they don't. It's like, man, some of these people just need to go away. But anyways, I digress. And the reason why is because God wanted people to realize, like, he wanted them to trust the people he sent to speak for him. Because, you know, you're sheep and he's sending you a shepherd and to lead and to teach and to nourish you on his behalf. And so, you know, you're God's representative, you're God's mouthpiece, you're God's teacher, you're speaking for him. I want to give you an example of this. I read this just about every Sunday before I preach. This is Jeremiah's calling to be the prophet. Okay? I'll put the address up on the screen in a minute, but just listen to this. The Lord said to Jeremiah, "Do not say I am only a youth, for to all who I send you, you shall go, and whatever I command you, you shall speak. Do not be afraid of them, for I am with you to deliver you, declares the Lord." Then the Lord put out his hand and touched my mouth. And the Lord said to me, "Behold, I have put my words in your mouth." I have put my words in your mouth. Then later on in his calling, in the chapter says, "But dress yourself for work, prepare yourself, gird up your loins. Arise and say to them everything that I command you. Do not be dismayed by them, lest I dismay you before them." And so the teacher's job has always been to speak exactly what God has said. And not, you know, the pastor's job, the teacher's job is not, regardless of what the position is, whether, you know, it's a Sunday school teacher for the kids or the pastor or anywhere in between, you know, ladies' Bible study leader, men's Bible study leader, whatever. You are not there to give your opinions. I cringe whenever people say, "Well, I think this means." I hate that, because it's not about what you think it means. It's about what as God says it is. Okay, like that's the way it's supposed to be taught and preached. You are speaking on God's behalf to his people, and you are only to say what God has commanded. You know, you are a herald, you are a witness. Okay, you're not somebody that does a TED talk. Okay, if you don't know what that means, look it up online. But that's another reason too why it is such a harsher judgment. I heard one pastor say one time years ago, and I wish I remember who said this, and it blew me away. He goes, he said, "We need to stop putting God's name in vain." And he didn't mean it in the traditional sense that we take that to mean. He says, too many times we say, "God said," or "God told me," when God didn't say and God didn't tell you. And you're taking the Lord's name in vain when you do that. Because you're saying God has said this, therefore it's wholly true and honorable and infallible, when that's not the case. And that's, you know, just as damning, okay, as any other way of taking God's name in vain. And so it is, and a lot of pastors and teachers lose sight of this, that their job is not to talk about what they think they should talk about. Like, that's not the job. That's not the calling. That's not the position. That's not the service. The job is, the service is, the calling is to speak God's truth and God's truth only. Okay? So all those things you were mentioning are correctly as well. So the main two ones I put in here is because they speak for God, all right, and they could also mislead people. Are the two big ones that I put in there. So I already read the Jeremiah passage. We're now going to move on to the other three. Ashley Jean, can you please turn to, oh, you already did. Can you read verses 3 and 4?
For the time will come when they will not endure sound doctrine, but according to their own desires, because they have itching ears, they will heap up for themselves teachers, and they will turn their ears away from the truth and be turned aside
Okay? They will turn away from the truth. Okay? These teachers that are not true, honest, biblical teachers will take them away from the truth, i.e., they will mislead them. Okay? They will mislead them. Okay? Isaiah 9. Was that you, Dave?
Yep.
16, please.
For the leaders of this people cause them to err, and they that are led of them are destroyed.
Okay? They are misled. Jeremiah 23, Miss Rochelle.
And I have seen the folly and the prophets of Samaria. They prophesied by Baal and caused my people Israel to err.
I'm sorry, they cause them to do what?
Err.
Error.
E-R-R.
O-R?
E-R-R.
Just E-R. Error. Er? Er. I hear you. Yes, again, misleading God's people, causing them to go away from the truth. Okay? This is why, okay, there is so much in the New Testament that talks about false teachers. Okay? A lot of verses in the New Testament are dedicated to false teachers. Matter of fact, in Jude starts off his letter saying, I really wanted to talk to you about the gospel and the love of God and everything like that. There's all these things I really wanted to talk to you about, but I got to talk to you about false teachers because it's a problem. Like, that's pretty much how he opened his letter. I'm paraphrasing, obviously, but, that's basically what he talks about in the opening of his letter. I really wanted to talk to you about all this other wonderful godly stuff, but I can't because there's a problem with false teachers I got to talk to you about instead. There's a lot in the New Testament that has to do with false teachers because they will mislead, they will misguide, they will misdirect you, and think about the way the Bible puts it, how false teachers will be demonic in and of themselves, just disguised as biblical teachers. And then there are teachers that Satan will purposely place in certain situations to mislead Christians from God. It is a part of spiritual warfare. I mentioned a few weeks ago in the articles in your bulletin about one of the things we need to watch out for in our spiritual lives is for false teachers. That's what the Bible tells us to do. So this is why, and also think of it too, think about how effective of a scheme it is for the devil. If you had an enemy you wanted to defeat, one of the best ways to do it is take a senior officer to misguide a whole platoon, a whole group of men they're in charge of. And that's what you have with a false teacher. You're not just focused on one or two Christians. You got the head person now, all right, and they're affecting a whole church all on their own without the devil having to do anything. Just kind of wind them up and let them go. And he can affect a whole slew of people, depending how big the church is. And so this is why they are judged harsher. All right, I read a quote earlier this week by Spurgeon when he talked about the call to being pastor, which obviously James is talking about just teaching in general, but he was talking about the calling of being pastor. He said, if there's anything else you can do, do that. Martin Lloyd-Jones said that whenever somebody came to him that thought they were called to the ministry, he would do everything he could to discourage them. Because he knew if they were really called, there was nothing he could do to stop it. But there were so many people that desired it that weren't really called, that didn't deserve to be up there speaking because they didn't even have the gift or the calling by God. Which leads me into my next question. Why? Not everyone desires this, okay? Not everyone desires this, but why do some people desire to be a teacher? Why would it be something that somebody might look like, yeah, I think I want to do that? What's desirable about it because it's not like he's saying here, not many of you should be, nursery workers. It's not like he's saying not many of you should be janitors. He's not saying not many of you should be deacons. He's just saying teachers. So there must be something about it that has a bit of an attractiveness to the church that makes people want to do it. Okay, absolutely. You think you're definitely pleasing God? Absolutely. Good.
You're learning along with who you're teaching.
What was that? I'm sorry?
You're learning along with your
Right. Very true. Very, very true. What else? Okay. I'm talking about outside of that gift. Like those that desire it that aren't called to it. Why would they want to be a teacher? What's desire about it? Maybe not even in a holy sense, but just in an earthly, fleshly sense, what would be desirous about it? Yeah, people would look up to him. Somebody mentioned that earlier, that people would look up to you in that. Yeah, absolutely.
It could give them in heaven.
Yeah, people could definitely think it would give them closer to God in heaven, for sure. Works their base, absolutely. What else? The authority, absolutely. And being in charge. And also, I think there's somewhat of a, or is the wrong word, but there's something about like a teacher, like there's something like prestigious about it, right? There's some type of prominence to it. You know, you're not some nobody that, washes windows. You're a teacher. You know what I mean? Yeah, absolutely. There's some type of prestige that comes with it, you know what I mean? Because people do look up to you. And also, too, I think when it comes to teachers, you just automatically assume they got to be smarter, right? They're teaching. They must be smarter, right? They're up there. They got the PowerPoint clicker. They got the notes on the table. They got to be smarter. They got to be more spiritual, right? They got to be spiritually mature, right? They got to be smarter, and that's why people look up to them. Some, right? You're right. Absolutely right. Another thing, too, for some people, and again, this is not everybody. But for some people, they desire the services that will be noticed by other people. They want to be noticed by other people. Was Jesus warned us about, getting your reward in full if you want in the pat of the back from the person next to you, right? But that's what some people, that was a problem in Corinthians. Paul was telling them, stop desiring all these gifts that are noticeable. He even said, all right, that those that are less desirable should be getting a double honor. The service gifts that are less desirable, that nobody wants to do, that nobody cares about, that nobody looks to, that everyone forgets about, those should be getting a double honor. Okay? Because it's a natural human thing for people to go, wow, look at them. Look at them. We desire to be recognized. We desire to be acknowledged. We've all had it in our lives when we've worked hard at something and no one's known it, no one's seen about it, no one's ever said a thank you, or we've done something really hard and worked really hard at it, and then the first thing that somebody does is complain about it. And it's all happened to all of us, and it gets us all upset, but it's like, well, what are you working for? The approval of other people here? Right? And so that's the other part of it too, when it comes to desiring teaching, is that, sometimes it's, wanting people to, notice your work and your service. Because there are a lot of jobs. I was actually thinking about this the other day when it comes to service in the church, and I was reflecting on our church and the service that we do and stuff like that. And it amazed me the amount of things that people are doing in our church right now that nobody knows about, which is a great thing. It's a great, great thing. But I would argue in your average church, the majority of the jobs and the services that go on are less noticeable than the ones that are noticeable. But that's the way it should be, because we're not working for men and women, we're working for God, right? We're serving for Him. So, I don't have anything up on the screen. Everything we talked about is, what you can put down on your sheet. Any one of those or multiples of those. Prestige, prominence, people looking up to you. You could appear more, spiritual. You must be smarter, and people are going to notice your service and think, man, they work so hard. Not only do they teach, but then they got to get ready to teach. They're so wonderful. That's what some people look for. That's what some people look for. But what should our focus be when it does come to service? Instead of these things that we just talked about that people desire when they want to be a teacher, what instead should we be looking at when it comes to what we serve or how we serve? What was that? Yes. And one other component that you actually mentioned earlier, Miss Ashley Jane. What do we need to focus on? Yes. How? No, we'll get to complaining later. We'll talk about complaining another time. When it comes to serving, where should you be looking besides Jesus?
The Lord gifted you with that?
Yes. What's it called in the Bible? Gift is one of the words. What's the first word? Yes, spiritual gift. That's right. And you mentioned earlier, Miss Ashley Jean, about were you gifted with that, teaching. We're not going to read these verses, okay? But I'll read one of them. But when it comes to our service, we shouldn't be desiring jobs for fleshly desires. Our service should be centered around, yes, God, of course, but what our spiritual gift is. That's where you start when it comes to your service.
Can you say at one time certain things that we aren't in a spiritual gift?
Yes, absolutely. Certain things like, for instance, witnessing. We all have to witness. That is not a spiritual gift. Now, some are called to be evangelists. That's a different thing. But we're all called as Christians to witness. We're all called as Christians to give. All right? So there are things we're called to do that are not a spiritual gift. But when it comes to specifically serving in the church, where you start with is your spiritual gift. Now, that's not all you do. You use your spiritual gift plus everything else God calls you to. Okay? But when you're looking at in your mind, okay, where should I serve in the church? A lot of times people look at, well, where do they need me? Right? Where is there a need? But where you really should be starting with is, what has God given me a spiritual gift of? That's always the focus for our service in the church. Now, yes, there are other things we're called to do as Christians that are not involving spiritual gifts, and you have to do those things as well. But teaching is a spiritual gift. And the only people that should be looking to teach are the ones that have the spiritual gift of teaching. And if you don't have that gift, you shouldn't be looking there. You should be looking where your gift is. When people come in to want to be new members of the church, one of the things I ask when they meet with me is, what's your spiritual gift and what do you plan on doing with it? Okay, that's one of the things I ask. The anticipation is to serve, and to serve with your spiritual gift, not to just I'll spend, once a month in the nursery because, that's all I can do. No, you should be looking at what you're... Now, some people have the gift of service and some other spiritual gifts that would tie into using in a nursery, and that's fine. But too many times we don't look at it, we start with the wrong foot. Okay, the right foot to start with is always your spiritual gift. Romans 12:6, I'll just read that one. Having gifts that differ according to the grace given to us, let us use them. Let us use them. Okay? Too many times people do not think about what their spiritual gift is and serving in that manner. But that's not the whole point of this. I'm not going to spend too much time on this. All right? What has God called you to do, and what's the gift? And what's the gift? All right. Questions so far? Good, because we're running out of time. All right. Everyone caught up before I move on? Bonnie, are you caught up? All right. Miss Rochelle, are you caught up? Okay, just check. You're welcome. All right, now for this one, again, I don't have anything on the screen. I just want to see what answers people came up with. I have a few of my own on my sheet, and you can just put down whatever you want on your sheet, okay? But what kinds of sinful speech are there? Or to put it another way, in what ways can you sin with your tongue? Because that's what we're talking about here, is your tongue and keeping it under control. So in what ways can you sin with the hole in your mouth? What was that? Gossip is one. You're absolutely right. How else?
Do not watch the news because you will definitely sin.
And how is that, Miss Linda? Do you swear at the TV? So cursing is another way you can sin with the tongue. Cursing. How else can you sin with your mouth?
That'll keep you busy right here.
Yeah, that's true. I heard something over here? Slander is another one. Good, yes. Sarcasm could definitely, joking around and, not everyone likes to be joked about, and not everyone likes having it at their expense. It's something I still work on myself, because even though I'm a very serious man, I joke once in a while. And sarcasm is something I definitely have to work on. What else?
Taking God's name in vain.
Yes, very good. Taking God's name in vain. What else? Oh, come on now. I got like 7 more.
Swear by something like that, or swear.
Okay, so being dishonest? Is that what you mean? Or were you saying like God's name in vain?
Or, yeah, I guess it's more like that. Just swearing. Yes should be yes, no should be no.
Oh, okay, yeah, so like being dishonest. You're saying you're going to do something and not fulfill it. Okay, I like that, yes. Being dishonest or lying. All right, I don't think anyone said lying yet. So being dishonest or lying, good. What else?
Putting people down.
Yes, absolutely. I put down, and this probably fits to what you were saying, Karen, is being cutting. Cutting. It's amazing. It's such a lie, that old phrase, the sticks and stones may hurt my bones, but words may never hurt me. It's such a lie. You can, yes, belittle. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely correct. What else? I'm sorry? Abuse. Yes, I put down here verbal abuse. Absolutely. I had to counsel a young lady many years ago about her husband verbally abusing her. That definitely is a sin of the tongue. What else? Anyone else? Huh? Threatening. Okay, that's one I didn't think of. That was very good, Mrs. Mooney. Yes. Threatening speech. Very good. All right, some other ones I thought of that haven't been said yet. I put down gloating. Gloating. Yeah, gloating. Not goading. Not goading. Gloating. Yeah, right, exactly. Bragging, gloating, yes. A source of pride in the heart there. I also put down being passive aggressive. Being passive aggressive. Because on the surface it sounds so innocent, but deep down you're really trying to dig. You're really trying to rub it in. You're truly trying to be aggressive in a passive sort of way. Another one I put down was saying half-truths. Saying half-truths. Things that are partially correct but not really correct, kind of misleading. Talk about false teaching. There's a reason that we started with teachers before even getting into talking about the tongue, right? Think about the damage a false teacher or bad teacher, an unsaved teacher could do in a church. And think about the damage that's been done with a lot of false religions that are out there. And how many of them are so close and very similar to Christianity. There's a lot of things that are, different and shading and stuff like that. So half-truths can be very much so. I put down, and I want to make sure I say this in the right way, but you can definitely be hurtful by being opinionated. Okay? There's a proverb that I love. I know I've said a bunch of times already, but I'll say it again. A fool loves to air out their own opinions. Okay? I mean, and so being opinionated and just always having to tell people what you think as if, you're the Word of God, you know what I mean? Like, can definitely be a wrong thing. That's why, it's in Ephesians that talks about, speaking with grace and salt and that kind of a thing. And the last one that I put down that I thought of as well was complaining. Complaining. Israel's were guilty of that. They never stopped complaining. They never stopped complaining. And boy, oh boy, let me tell you something. Working in customer service in one way, shape, or form for, 20 years, I'm going to say. Because I worked in customer service from when I was in high school all the way till now. I mean, I'm not on the phones anymore in that, but I still hear. It's amazing to me how people sound calling and complaining. And they feel they have the right to because they were wronged. And it's amazing. It is amazing. They do not realize how foolish they sound when they complain about such trivial things like somebody killed their dog. Like that's the way they sound, like somebody just took out their puppy, and really all that happened was, something, a mistake was made, sure. A wrong was done, yes, but you're acting like, we need to call Al Shapiro here and get CNN cameras around you. Okay, like what's going on here? Because of my being on the other side of things, and even hearing Christians and their complaints. I mean, I worked at a Christian bookstore for a number of years. It amazed me, the complaining of Christians.
Isn't all over money though?
No, not just that. No, not all of it. Some of it, yes, absolutely it is. Some of it is, absolutely. But it's just, when you expect something and you don't get what you expect, somebody's going to pay up. And somebody's going to get an earful. Okay, whatever it is, whether, my food at the restaurant isn't the way I liked it, I expected to buy this off the shelf and it wasn't there, or I had to be on hold for 5 minutes, or anything else in between. Like, oh my goodness. We have an expectation and they didn't meet up to my expectation. And what does Philippians say? Do everything without complaining or arguing. And Nicole will tell you, there have been some horrible stuff that have happened to me at like stores or restaurants. I never say anything. Anything. I never send anything back. I very rarely return something. I just never do it. I never do it. Because I know what it's like on the other side. And it just amazes me how people don't realize how horrible they sound. I mean, it is unbelievable. But complaining, and you know what? A big thing nowadays too. A big thing nowadays is to act and play the victim. And it's a big thing nowadays. Unbelievable. We are all oppressed, and we don't really know what oppression is. I don't know, Bonnie. I don't know if I agree with that. Don't put her out there without her defending herself.
That's one of the, you can put that down.
He had so much trouble with her floor.
You didn't hear that.
No, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. So I mean, it is, it is amazing to me. I mean, don't get me wrong. There is nothing wrong with calling customer service. There is nothing wrong with returning something because it's broken or anything like that. But it amazes me the attitude that's attached to it. I mean, it's just, it is mind-numbing. It really is. Yeah, I mean, I just don't even bother a lot of times. I mean, don't get me wrong, I return stuff and stuff like that, but I never once I mean, I don't know. I've been there, and I've been on the other end, and it's just amazing to me the way people complain about things. It's like, you complain about whatever, and there's like people in other countries that would love to have the thing that you're complaining about. Like, what's going on here? And so that is definitely a sin of the mouth, and I better be careful because I might be complaining about the complainers. All right, let's move along here. Next is another self-reflecting question. All right, next is another self-reflecting question. In what ways are you stumbling right now? In what ways are you struggling right now? This is a personal question.
How many ways do you want it?
Well, that's why I'm not going to ask for an answer, Wayne. I know we don't have that much time. We're just going to have Miss Rochelle share. No, I'm teasing, Miss Rochelle. I know you have nothing to write down. In what ways are you struggling right now?
Loving the neighbor.
It could be of many things. And for everyone, it's something different. Because another thing, too, is we do struggle in different ways. Okay, we do struggle in different ways. There are some things that we are better in and other people are weaker in. And there are some things we're weaker in that other people are stronger in. So that's why this is a personal question. Just write a couple things down that you're struggling with as a Christian. Whatever it is. It could be anything. Impatience and lust. It could be loving your neighbor. It could be praying. It could be giving. It could be forgiving. It could be a bunch of different things. Now, the reason I had you write these down, okay, is because of what James says here. All right? He says in verse 2, "For we all stumble in many ways." All right? So I want you to think about the ways you stumble. But then he goes on to say, "And if anyone does not stumble in what he says, he's perfect, able to keep his whole body in check." So out of all the ways that we stumble, all right, and you guys have put a few down on your sheets, why is it that it's controlling our tongue the thing that makes you perfect? Out of all the different ways we sin, out of all the different things we struggle with as Christians, why is it the mouth that he says is what's going to help us keep everything else in check?
What comes out of your mouth is from your heart.
Very true. Very good point. He could have said anything, the person, who does not lust is a perfect person and keeps his whole body in check. Or he could have said, the person that loves his neighbor as himself is, keeps himself in check and his whole body is, perfect and all that kind of stuff. Why is it... I'm sorry. I jumped ahead a little bit. So it says, out of all the different ways of stumbling, why is controlling our tongue the thing that makes us perfect? And I already gave out the answer. Because you then control your whole body. Okay, that's what he says. You then control your whole body. And then I'm going to get into the next question. Why is it that controlling our tongue controls our body? But out of anything you're going to mention, all right, he says the tongue is what will keep your whole self in check. It'll keep your whole self controlled. Now remember, we learned from chapter 1, all right, when he talks about the word perfect, all right, he's obviously not talking about perfection. He's talking about maturity, all right, in Christian character. That's what's meant here by perfection, or being perfect. So another way to phrase it in your Bibles is, and anyone who does not stumble in what he says, he is a mature person. Okay, a mature Christian is a one that can keep their tongue under control. Okay, and so how does it that controlling our tongues controls our bodies? How is it that controlling our tongues controls our bodies? How does he make this connection? It may not be as obvious as you think.
It doesn't say that word, but I'm thinking that your attitude just comes out in how you speak.
Okay. Kind of like what Wayne said, like it comes from the heart.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Good. It does connect to that a little bit. You both are right there. What else? Did you want to say something, Ashley?
Not really.
Okay. All right. That's fine. That's fine.
I just was thinking about Wayne was the scripture that says
Comes from the heart?
Some of the heart, the mouth.
So it does speak to that, yes. And I'll just go over the answer just because we're a little short on time. So what he's basically saying here is that if you're a mature person, your tongue is under control. And if your tongue is under control, you're a mature person. So what he is saying here is not necessarily that if you control your tongue, everything else follows. What he is saying is if you grow up in a maturity as a Christian, your tongue will also be bridled. If you are a perfect person, quote unquote, mature person, then your tongue in and of itself will be in check. Like that will go hand in hand with it. That's what he's saying. So yes, you guys are both right. If your heart is pure, okay, if your heart is in right with God, then so will your mouth. All right? If you have control of your tongue, then you're mature. Thus, your body will also be in control. Meaning, maturity in Christ is what brings about your body and your tongue being under control. Okay? Maturity in Christ is what... If you don't control your life, if your life is in a mess and it's not under the power and control of the Holy Spirit, then neither will your tongue. Okay? If you're an immature Christian, then your tongue's not going to be under control. All right? Like that's kind of what he is saying, which ties into what you guys are saying about the heart. All right. Then he goes into, and this is our last question here, and then we'll finish up. He goes into talking about these illustrations. All right. He uses a horse and he uses a ship, talking about how these little pieces of material control something so large, right? Why? What is James's point with these illustrations? What's the point? What's the emphasis here with these two specifically, between the ship and the horse? What's he trying to get across here? Okay. All right. All right. Will you say something, Miss May? Oh, she was saying maybe it's kind of like a guide. Your tongue is a guide, just like a ship rudder is. Like that's what she was thinking about. Did I paraphrase you right?
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to make sure I didn't misquote you. Anyone else?
Don't forget to not the small.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Just because it's small and insignificant doesn't mean it's something we should neglect. Okay? Just because it's small and insignificant. I mean, think about it. Us talking a lot, we don't think is that big of a deal compared to like physically harming somebody. You know what I mean? Like we have these like levels in our minds and tiers in our minds. For some reason, us talking a lot and having diarrhea of the mouth is not that big a deal, but compared to other things, okay. But he is saying, look, just because it's small, just because it's insignificant, just because it doesn't cause physical harm to somebody, all right, or just because somebody may not hear what you have to say, right, doesn't mean this is something you should neglect. Okay? Now, I want to take this full circle here, okay? Go back on your sheets to question 1. You wrote down what you're focusing on in your Christian walk. After looking at these verses, shouldn't the only thing on this first question be the tongue? That should really be the only thing that's on there. And that's why I had you write this in the beginning of your sheet, because I wanted you to know what you're focusing on, and then to have you realize it should be the tongue. It should be the tongue. It should be your mouth. It should be your language. It should be your conversation. Okay? Not to say the other things you wrote down should be neglected. That's not what I'm saying. But I wanted to show emphasis on, we need to have more emphasis on the tongue, on the mouth. A lot of times we don't focus on that. And that will lay bare to what you put in your answers for question 1 there. Okay? The tongue should be a focus in our walk. Our conversation should be part of our prayer life. Right? God, please guide me in my words and what I say today. Please help me with my speech. May it be uplifting and not degrading and all kinds of stuff. Help me control my tongue by the power of your Spirit. This should be more of a focus in our walk than it is. We definitely focus on things in our walk, but the conversation in our mouths can easily be forgotten, and we shouldn't. All right, let's close in prayer. I've talked enough. Lord, we thank you so much for your word warning us about our conversation. May we not make the mistake, Father, of neglecting, watching over our mouths. May we not, Father, make the mistake of dismissing how powerful our mouths can be. May we understand the impact that our words can have. And while we may feel right and righteous in what we say, it doesn't mean that we are. May we instead, Father, be quick to listen and slow to speak. May your Holy Spirit, by his mighty power, help us control our mouths. We pray these things in your Son's name. Amen.